Howdy folks, I'm Rebecca Jolly, the Jolly Alchemist. Today we are going to be doing a neutrino forecast for, let's see what our date is, Thursday, the 23rd of October, 2025. And today is one of those days where we're experiencing the crunching together of the lines. So I'm going to try to cover lines 4 and 5 of gate 50 and gate 3. Of course, I have so much to say on so many subjects, and I'm feeling less and less pulled towards the importance of the minutiae of the details. But obviously the people who are following me are getting something out of those details, so that's okay, that's fine, we can go over it real quickly. But then I have other things to say, of course. Saying the details is usually filling my time, but I'm just needing to experiment with not being bound by time in that way. So I don't know what I'm going to say, but there's a bunch of stuff to talk about, so let's start to talk about it. We start off with 50, line 4, that is corruption of values, to maintain one's strength despite questionable values, and into 50, line 5, consistency, conservative awareness of basic values. So basically what we're doing in this whole grouping is talking about values. And when we're talking about values, we're talking about our judges, because values have to do with laws and interactions with people. And so Ra says we're looking at the kinds of people who are affecting different laws and systems. And it's kind of interesting, I think, because the one person that I found who carries the 4th line in the 50th gate in 64 Keys database is actually a Texas state representative. So somebody who is actually involved with the creation and mutation of laws. Fontaine Maury Maverick. Don't know this person, but that's very interesting, isn't it? That the person who shows up carrying that energy is someone who is on that juxtaposition cross. And in this case, it is the juxtaposition cross of values. And Ra talks about this juxtaposition cross being really about there's this feeling of corruption to the 4th line, and we put a judgment on that, but there doesn't necessarily need to be a judgment. I think what's happening there, according to Ra, is that these people are able to soften the laws. They're able to say, for example, Ra uses the story of somebody stole a loaf of bread. Do we really need to cut off their hand? It was just a loaf of bread. Sort of a softening of the laws and a recognition of what those laws are doing to the lives of the actual people, being able to say, oh, okay, well, this is not quite so much something that we need to do capital punishment for, but it's technically it is a corruption. And as long as you take the value judgment away from corruption, which is difficult to do in our society, but remember, there is no judgment in human design. There need to be people who soften the values. Now, I find this kind of interesting because I myself carry the 3rd line, as I've said, of the 50th gate. And I've also talked about how I've had to put aside my values at certain times and do things for the sake of surviving. And for making sure that the people that I was responsible for were surviving. And of course that is happening here as I have this channel of survival between the 57 and the 34 twice. So the ability to survive superseded those values coming out of the 50th gate for me. And it's kind of a corruption. It's looking, the third line is definitely, adjacent to the fourth line, looking into that energy of, you don't want to break the law, but you want to bend it a little. And actually, our laws need to bend. And actually, moving forward, we are going to need flexibility in this area to be able to create new laws to go into our new age. I think that in the age that that we're emerging out of here, the cross of planning, and very much where things were strictly delineated for the sake of the tribe. Well, now that we're leaving some of that tribal energy behind and moving more into individual energy, I think that this is one of those places where maybe we will see chaos moving forward. But I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's just another layer and level of us learning to work together, learning to value the individual over the tribe or the collective, to be able to say, hey, yeah, we did the experiment. It ran a good long time. We've had 400 years pulling people together, sacrificing for the cause, submitting to the laws of the tribe, and now maybe the laws of the tribe are going to need to bend out a little bit and allow for us to have our individuality in a way that we did not have before. So we'll see. When it comes to the fifth line, which is, was it conservatism or something like that? Consistency. Ross says that these people are the only judges who carry this actual fifth line energy, who have the true capacity to change the law, who have the wisdom. By the time we get to the fifth line, they're carrying the true maturity and fullness of the hexagram and able to really look out over it and say, okay, this is what should be done. And interestingly enough, I have somebody in my life who carries that exact line. We're talking about this right here. This 50th gate is in the fifth line, and he carries the detriment. So that means that he will have a tendency sometimes to, or the ability to be able to rebel against what was actually causing, what actually worked in the past, what was proving to be consistent. And that's exactly the kind of energy that we need moving forward, to be able to say, oh, I have a mature understanding of what our laws are, what our values are, and I can actually see there are some places where these things need to change. So let's change them. It's interesting. Our third line, our third gate, line 4 is charisma that attracts nourishing energy, and line 5 is what 64 Keys calls courage. Ra calls it victimization. Of course, that's his shock and awe campaign happening there. To stand by one's convictions, even if unclear. So, on the other side of the question of values, we have the question of confusion. Now, in the fourth line, where we have charisma, what's happening there is you're getting this flavor. And interestingly enough, we have this flavor passing through today because the moon, which starts off in 43, will move to 14. So 43 is here, and 14 is here. This is the money bags, and this is, the resources looking for direction. And then 34, we don't see this, by the way, very often, this activations in this channel this year. Apparently, we're not meant to be worrying about what happens with the money. And that makes sense. If we're moving into an age where we're really going to be carrying much abundance, there's going to be enough for everyone. That's all right. And into 34, that's the point that I was getting to, this gate of power coming out of the sacral center. And because we already have the 20th being activated, what was it that was doing that? Uranus, then the 34 and the 20 will meet together and give us this channel of charisma, or the classic manifesting generator channel. And of course, this is also the channel of people who, more than any other, really need guidance, especially if they don't have definition in one of the three awareness centers: the spleen, the mind, or the solar plexus, the emotional center. So, that is that. So basically, he's talking about the nature of charisma and the recognition that when we're in confusion, there is the need for someone else to come in and help. Actually, I know somebody who carries this energy. In fact, I made somebody who carries this energy. And, it's interesting, when I read that, it said that these are the people who say to the other, I'm confused. And then someone will immediately come along, in this case, it was me, and say, oh, well, let me clear up that confusion for you. Let me explain it to you. They explain it, and the person goes, I'm so confused. I don't get it. And actually, this reminds me of an episode of Sherlock Holmes we watched last night, where they're fighting against this bad guy, and Dr. Watson is just standing there, and he's going, I'm confused. And the bad guy says, you should get a t-shirt with that made. And then just a few minutes later, they're going on, and Dr. Watson says, I'm still confused. And he says, and there's the back of the t-shirt. That would be the actual energy of these third gate line 4 people of, I'm just confused. I don't really know how much to explain it. I'm confused. But there is this recognition there that in that fourth line, you're moving to the other, you're connecting with the other, you're really needing the other. And of course, we learn from that the importance of not being able to do it alone. Life is confusing. Life is difficult to understand. If we're only on this path by ourselves, only ever in sort of a right angle process where we're kind of inwardly focused, it's very difficult to come to an end of confusion. And so we need to be able to connect with those people, especially, Ross says, 6-line people who have the ability to get above and see out, get a greater perspective, and show us what's out there so that we can find an end to our confusion. All right, so the 5th line, this whole subject of victimization is an interesting one. Basically, what it's saying is that if you're really confused in our world, there's definitely the possibility, kind of always, of somebody trying to, somebody being there to take advantage of you. You're standing at the airport, you're confused. Oh, believe there will be a taxi driver come to charge you double the price to show you the hotel next door or something like that, So the 5th line of the 3rd gate in this case also has a down arrow, which is the confused energy that's dominated by the ordering power of others. So that does actually allow others to dominate it, and instead of having its own wisdom, which is, yeah, I'm confused, but we'll get to the end of that. It'll figure itself out some way. If they allow someone else to come in and say, oh, well, let me show you, well, then they get victimized. They are the ones who pay $100 to go to the hotel next door. Somebody's got to carry the energy. And Ross says really the only problem is that confusion as a trait isn't valued by our society. There's something wrong with people that are confused. So in the case of my offspring that carries this energy, I was always really confused that I couldn't explain it. So we had this 4323 trying to come to some and I was like, I explained it. I thought I explained it pretty well. Why are you still confused? I don't get it. And she's just going, whoa, I just don't get it. Well, Now I know that there's something there in her that is specifically about, yeah, carrying the energy of confusion, being okay with it, trying to, hold space for that confusion, because in that confusion is also an openness to the new. This is the third gate. This is the gate of mutation. This is the gate where real and true change comes into the world. Now, the world may not understand it because that's in individual circuitry, and the world has a hard time understanding our true individuals. But there is value and purpose in that third hexagram for us. We have actually 3 activations potentially happening in the 43rd gate. The first line is featured in the moon, and the 5th is in Mercury, and the 3rd is in Mars. So I thought, well, we've been looking at 3 and we've been looking at 1, but let's look at 5, and it's also moving to 6. So 43 line 5 is relatedness, the gift of sharing one's insights with others. This is the gate of insight that's happening right here, 43. And moving into line 6 today, breakthrough, as knowledge is collectively of value. So today's a good day to be inspired by something. If you need inspiration, today is sure enough a good day to find it. So those of us who are dealing with, say, writer's block, today's a good day to go to a coffee shop and access that energy from everyone else as far as and the planet, and bring up those connections between the mind and the throat and get something moving on that score today. We also have Venus in 48. 48 is, of course, depth. Here in the channel of mastery. And that depth is looking at line 3, isolation, the development of depth as an isolated process. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So we have 2 connections being made today between the 3 and the 60, of course. They're in that middle channel. That's our channel of innovation. And because the 20 will connect to the 34, we have the channel of charisma happening at some point throughout the day. Not all day, but for a few hours today we will have that. There's no big changes. The song that came through for today is The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and a bunch of other people, but I got tired of writing, so it's an interesting song. I had learned this little piece of the song from that Disney movie. Is it Disney or some kind of children's movie about the penguins with the little dancing guy, and he goes, "Don't push me, 'cause I am close to the edge." I was like, okay, it's obviously coming from somewhere. It's coming from this song. So, very interesting. But it is about the laws and the results of the laws and the needs for the laws and all these kinds of things. So I was just like, all right, good song. So that's that. We did talk about the people who were carrying the juxtaposition cross, more famous people. But when we're moving into the left angle cross of wishes, we have a whole different batch of people. So I'll tell you those people now. They are Stephen R. Covey, Wilhelm Fleece, Ryan Reynolds, Emily Levine, Thomas Babington Macaulay, Bill Wyman, and Beat Usa. Okay, I don't really know a whole lot about any of those people, but Ryan Reynolds is a flash lately, and when it's coming to the cross of wishes, which is our left angle, so that's what we'll be talking about with the 5th line and the 6th line. It's this was an interesting part. He says this is the most culturally threatening cross because these people are the ones who are going, well, look at their values over there. Maybe we should switch them. Maybe we should change them. And he talks about this, and it's interesting because when he was writing this stuff, it was, of course, like 15 or more years ago. And he's already seeing the rise of fundamentalism, the rise of fascism, the rise of extremism in our values, in our beliefs, in our ideals, in the laws that people would like to make. And he just straight out says, this is an absolute result of the fact that the age of religion is dying and or dead. The people who are, who were thriving and really on the top of that system are now going, oh, crying about it and just trying to clamp down and say, oh, so we're seeing fundamentalism rising in all of the religions because all of the religions recognize the death knells and are trying to get that back. Of course, that will not be successful in the long run. So yeah, they're going to try their shit, but I kind of tend to think, don't worry about them. Don't give them your energy because it's fading. And really what we're having here is a period where we're very much needing a passing of the guard. We're needing the old people, especially the old white male people who are so furiously clamping down on energies that are no longer useful for us, moving into a new age, into a new time. They need to die because they won't change. They're stuck in these patterns of, oh, I have control. One of my very good friends says all the time that in reference to the shifting of these energies that we have on the globe, for those of us who are on top, the experience of being treated as equal feels like persecution. It feels like they're being, somebody's shitting on their heads. And of course, the rest of us are not feeling terribly sorry for them. We've been getting the shit end of the stick for a long, long time in a lot of cases, especially in the cases of, our minorities, especially racial minorities and sexual minorities. Of course, those are the ones that are getting the most focus nowadays, but I think it's about time for that focus to go there and for us to say, look, it's unequal. Let's even it out because we all matter. We all have a place. We all have something important to give to the world, and that is, of course, one of the biggest messages that we get out of human design. We're each of us individual. Nobody has a chart that's just like this, and nobody has a chart that's just like anybody else's chart. So what point is there in crushing a large number of these individual sparks? We need these individual sparks. We need their voices. We need their talents. We sure do not need their slavery anymore. And yet slavery is a wonderful system for the people who are on top taking advantage of that. So we have sort of the haves and the have-nots who've been butting heads for many, many years. For sure, the last 400, that's coming to an end. But of course, that doesn't stop the people who are going to be losing their unfair supremacy from crying and whining about that at the back door. Oh well. But it was interesting that he noticed that right there. And really what's happening here in this cross of wishes is we have people wishing that they could have something different. And then we also, of course, have them being really single-mindedly devoted to one way over others. So there's some interesting, movement and shifting of things in this cross of wishes. At some point here, I do want to kind of, even though it's a daily transit, spend a little bit of time looking at some of the longer transits. But because I've already been gabbing about, I don't even really know what, for a goodly time, I think maybe I will try to do that tomorrow, especially since today it was kind of a big day with trying to handle two line definitions at the same time. Really, what I'm wanting to do, I think, is to move into more just a focus on the daily mission. And, I can give other information and definitions as they're as they're passing through, if there's something of interest or something like that. But not spending so much time just talking about, oh, the moon is doing this, blah, 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 because I'm not sure that the world is actually needing or ready for that. I had a talk with somebody the other day, and they knew that I was into the transits, and they said, when we got together, they're like, okay, the transits. And I was just like, yeah, but that doesn't really matter unless you're tracking them, unless you're looking at them, unless you're watching them on an ongoing basis. The fact that we moved from 18 to 48, what do you give a shit, So, I mean, of course, there is value there, and it is nice to know, oh, okay, the energy of inspiration is there for us today. Those of us who do not carry the 43rd gate, maybe it would be nice for them to feel that energy and know that they're feeling that energy and consciously apply themselves to receiving an inspiration in this day. All right, I see value in that. But the deep diving into the little bits of it, I think, as far as what people are sensitized to feeling, the nuances of moving from the third line to the fourth line might not actually catch. It might be more like, we're in this gate. Fine. We don't need to focus on it quite so narrowly all the time. And of course, if you do need to focus on it, well, what I'm thinking about doing is going back and changing my transits from just focusing on the date, since the date is past, to saying, okay, yeah, this was the date that this transit was originally recorded, but it's covering this energy, so that when you're looking for this energy, you can see that energy happening again by just going back and looking at that transit. Oh, we already covered the cross of laws. We already covered the 50th gate. And when we covered it, this is the things we said about it. This energy is still on the planet now. Moving more towards that, so that I can start to cover some larger issues and, deeper things, and the roiling changes that are inside me as I'm starting to really sink down into the depth of design and realize how much it's the details are important, the details are good, but you can get lost in the details, and in that getting lost in the details, you can lose the bigger picture. And I think that's what some people are doing, is spending so much time in those details that they forget the importance of how they blend, how they move, and what's going on in larger themes between, like, people getting together and stuff like that. So anyway, that's a mess and bullshit for later. We have covered the basics for today, and you come on back. We will cover them again tomorrow and continue an ongoing discussion about values. So until tomorrow, y'all take care of yourselves. I am the Jolly Alchemist. Ciao.